We're constantly told our country is broke, that there isn't enough money for public services, for housing, for veterans, or for struggling families. And yet somehow, there's always cash to splash when it comes to migrants. Not only are your taxes paying for endless hotel stays, but they're also bankrolling migrant housing schemes, HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, popping up all across the land. These properties aren't cheap. They're funded, maintained, and overseen at the taxpayer's expense. And who pays the price? Ordinary Brits once again. While young families can't get on the housing ladder, while pensioners choose between heating and eating, while homeless veterans sleep rough on our streets, our leaders are cutting blank checks to keep migrants housed in comfort. But it doesn't stop there. We'll dive into this story in today's video, but before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Right now, only 12% of our viewers are subscribed, so join the community and help us grow. You can take the migrant out of the third world, but you cannot take the third world out of the migrant. These HMOs quickly become overcrowded, chaotic, and unsafe. Standards plummet, neighborhoods suffer, and communities that never asked for this in the first place are left to deal with the fallout. Antisocial behavior rises, crime creeps in, and local people are made to feel like strangers on their own streets. This is not compassion, this is not fairness, this is social engineering at the expense of the British public. Our country is being reshaped without our consent, and the very people footing the bill are the ones suffering most. So the question is simple: how long are we going to tolerate this? How long will we allow our taxes to be drained, our neighborhoods disrupted, and our families pushed to the back of the queue, all in the name of failed open border policies? Have a look at the utter state of this HMO. And let's be real, these HMOs are not just expensive, they're filthy, overcrowded, unhygienic, and left in absolute squalor. That's the reality when you pack in people who have no respect for British standards of living. Instead of safe, well-kept housing, what we end up with are properties falling apart, rubbish piled high, and neighborhoods dragged down into third world conditions. This is what our taxes are paying for. Not dignity, not order, not respect, but filth, chaos, and communities being destroyed. It's a disgrace, and it has to end. In other news, wealthy pensioners could be asked to hand over more in taxes under proposals being urged on Chancellor Rachel Reeves. A group of top economists and former government insiders say older people with valuable homes and large pension pots should shoulder a bigger share of the nation's tax bill. The call comes as Ms. Reeves faces a huge £20 to £30 billion black hole in the public finances ahead of November's budget. The coalition, which includes ex-Cabinet Secretary Lord O'Donnell and former Treasury Minister Lord O'Neill of Gatley, is backing plans for new wealth and property taxes to help fill the gap. Operating as the Invest in Britain campaign, the group argues that better off older people need to contribute more if the government is to keep funding pensions, the NHS and social care while stabilising the economy. They argue these changes are needed to fund the growing strain on public services, such as the NHS, social care and state pensions. Without fresh sources of revenue, the government risks being unable to meet rising demand, particularly from an aging population. In their letter, the group described the proposals as progressive pro-growth options that could ease the UK's fiscal squeeze while creating a fairer system. The signatories bring heavyweight economic credentials from Mariana Mazzucato at University College London's Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose to Mohammed El Arian, the former chief executive of investment giant PIMCO, and Sir Anton Muscatelli of the University of Glasgow. They are joined by well-known academic economists Simon Wren-Lewis of Oxford University and Jonathan Portes of King's College London, who also back the calls for reform. Among the specific measures on the table are government plans to overhaul stamp duty and council tax, which the group say would make the tax system more efficient and sustainable. The tax and pension system needs to be rebalanced so that better off older people, especially those with substantial property and pension wealth, make a much larger contribution to addressing the fiscal pressures that result from increasing spend on the NHS, social care and pensions, the letter seen by The Times said. Ms. Reeves, however, faces an uphill battle. The Office for Budget Responsibility is expected to downgrade forecasts for growth and productivity, which would widen the deficit even further. Some analysts believe the gap against the government's main fiscal rule could swell to as much as £40 billion. The problem has been made worse by the government's decision to reverse £6 to £8 billion of planned welfare cuts, adding yet more pressure to the books. Ms. Reeves has also boxed herself in politically by ruling out hikes to VAT, national insurance and income tax, limiting her room for manoeuvre as she prepares November's budget. The government's main fiscal rule means day-to-day spending must be covered entirely by tax receipts rather than borrowing. These restrictions set by ministers themselves have only added to the pressure to find new ways of raising money. In their letter, the economists admit the fiscal challenges are real, but stress they are not inescapable if the government is willing to reform the tax system more fundamentally. They are also pushing for a major increase in public investment, warning that under current plans, investment will stay flat as a share of GDP for the whole of this parliament. That would leave the UK well behind both OECD averages and Britain's own post-war record. The economists propose reforms to fiscal frameworks that would compel governments to account for long-term challenges such as climate change during budget planning. They suggest the Chancellor should exploit flexibilities within existing debt rules, particularly those introduced last year, targeting public sector net financial liabilities. The group also recommends following International Monetary Fund guidance by reducing OBR forecasts to one per year, rather than the current biannual assessments. This change would prevent frequent policy adjustments driven by the need to satisfy fiscal targets. The signatories described their proposals as elements of a credible strategy to boost economic growth and prosperity, strengthen fiscal sustainability, and enhance business and investor confidence. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you have not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you, take care, goodbye.